When I was around 21 or 22, I was living in South Philly at the time. I moved out of that city when I was maybe 29 or 30. Mind you, this happened around 1998 or 1999, but the memory is burned into my subconscious, and I'll never forget it as long as I'm still breathing. On this particular day, I had taken a sick day from work. I worked my ass off every day for 8 to 10 hours, and every now and then, a man needs a day to himself. And it felt good to sleep in that day. I was so used to waking up around 6, so waking up around noon was like a gift from God himself. I spent the rest of the day making my rounds in the neighborhood, stopping and talking to my barbershop buddies and the guys in the corner of the deli. Even stopped in for a game or two of cards. My day off was going awesome, and I remember being sad it was nearing sundown. So I headed home, made dinner, and decided to walk to a buddy's house a few blocks away for some beers. After my visit with my lifelong friend Mike, plenty drunk, I head home. It was late, and the 6 or 7 block walk felt like suicide. So in my drunken mind, taking a shortcut through an alleyway in South Philly at 11 p.m. sounded fine and totally rational to me. Up ahead, I saw an alleyway to my left that would cut a lot of time out of my drunk commute. So as I turn into the alleyway, the first thing I notice is how dark it is. There was one small street lamp about halfway through the alleyway, but it didn't light up much. And then I noticed the woman. She was sitting at the side of the alleyway on a little coffee table of some sorts. It's hard to describe, but she was a black woman, and her attire, it seemed like it was from the Victorian era. It was like slave clothes. She was sitting at this table, looking down as if she was reading, and then she looked up at me. She stared at me for about 5 seconds. Then she pointed down the alleyway and told me in a stern voice, "Don't you go down there, son. There's bad people down there." Confused and in shock, I just stared at her, nodding my head. I stared at her for what felt like hours as I backed away. I didn't say a word, and I took the long way home. Even to this day, I don't know what I saw that night. Was it really a human being warning me about bad people down that alleyway? I don't know. Was it a ghost or an angel? I would like to think so, but I don't think I'll ever know. I used to be a bartender back when I was in my mid-20s. The bar I worked at closed at 2 a.m. So around 1 a.m., anyone who was still sticking around, desperate to pick up any chick at that point, was asked to leave. And we'd clean up and get the hell out of there. This night was a good night. My tips were good, and no trouble all night, which is unusual. As I finished my closing duties, I said goodbye to my friend, also a co-worker, and everyone else, then headed home. I didn't have a car at the time, so I used to have to walk home, about 8 or 9 blocks. And as I walked out the front door of my bar, there was an older, dirty man, sitting Indian style against the brick wall, slumped over, like he was asleep. I paid him no mind and actually felt sort of bad for him. I was enjoying the evening, or technically early morning. It was about 65 degrees, cool and breezy. It was a beautiful June night. And then I hear it, like clothes rubbing together. Someone was behind me. I turned around, and it was the man from the bar who was asleep on the ground, crouch walking. He stopped when he saw me. In a panic, I turned around and dialed my friend Jess from the bar. I told her I was being followed by a strange man and that I feared for my life. Luckily, she was still at the bar, about 5 or 6 blocks away. All I had to do was keep as much distance towards me and this cretin as I possibly could till she got here. Minutes felt like hours. Minutes felt like hours. And I remember being so overwhelmed with panic that I actually started to cry. And then I see lights approaching from behind. It was Jess. And I never loved my friend more than in that moment. And my relief was so overwhelming. She pulled up beside the man, rolled down her window, and started verbally disintegrating the man. He gave some BS how he was just walking home too. Who crouch walks home? Then he calmly turned around and walked away. I hopped in Jess's car and she took me home. I don't walk home anymore. Even though it may be inconvenient for her, she still gives me rides home every night. And I am so grateful for her. I owe my life to Jess. This happened back in 2003, but it always stayed with me. I always took walks at night after dinner time, part of my routine to finish out my day. It gave me peace and made me more creative, believe it or not. One night, like any average night, I was walking a little later than usual, around 10:30 p.m. I usually had headphones on with my CD player at the time, but for some reason decided not to bring them this night. I lived in a little town of about 4,000 people. My neighborhood was always safe, so I felt comfortable walking alone at night. About 15 minutes into my walk, I hear a sound behind me, like a foot stepping on the concrete. It was a man around age 30 or 35, strong build and tall. I'm male myself, but felt the man had horrible, most likely violent intentions. Luckily, he was far enough behind me where we had some distance. I sped walked, faster than I ever had to, regretting my choice to take a walk this late. I could hear him getting closer, and as fight or flight mode was kicking in, I saw headlights coming towards me on this quiet suburban street. It was my friend Alex and his girlfriend driving back to his house. Once he noticed me and saw I was obviously being followed, he slammed on his brakes and got out to confront my stalker. By the time he made it to the opposite side of his truck, the guy had booked it the other way, most likely feeling scared by Alex's size. He asked if I was okay, and he offered to take me home. This happened when I was 18, back in 2003. I've taken thousands of walks at night since, and never saw that man or anyone again.